Good evening, everybody. Before I open the meeting, could I please ask any members or officials in physical attendance with an electronic device to mute it to avoid feedback? And can I please ask any remote participants to keep their microphones off unless they wish to speak? Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that staff may be using body-worn cameras within the premises. Data captured during these recordings will be processed and retained in accordance with the Council's data retention policy, and the meeting recorded may be published on the Council's website. Members accessing this meeting remotely should use their Swale Borough Council or their KCC laptop to participate virtually. If you joined using the link on the website or on a mobile and tablet device, the device is not always possible to identify you, and you may not be recorded as in remote attendance. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Swale Joint Transport Board meeting and include any members of the public. I'd like to advise that the following staff are in attendance in the chamber or remotely. We have Seafront and Engineering Manager for Swale Borough Council, Mike Knowles, who's joined us remotely. Swale Highways Manager, KCC's Daniel Cannon Street, who has joined us remotely. We have Democratic Services, Philippa Richardson, here with us in person. Are there any officers in attendance that have not already been named? We also have Guy Bates, who's the Head of Freight Development for Network Rail. We have Francis Cluett, Head of M25 Operations South East, and Rob Knight, the General Manager for Sheppey Route Limited. Please be advised that there are no fire drills planned this evening. If the alarm sounds, those in attendance should leave via the exits indicated and assemble outside where directed. Do not use the lifts. If anyone in attendance requires extra assistance, please make yourselves known to us so that we can assist. Thank you, Councillor Watson. Are there any absences or apologies that have been sent in, or any substitutes so far?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies have been received from Kent County Councillor Anthony Hook, as he has another meeting to attend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sorry, it's Councillor Bonney here. Sorry, I can't be present, so I'm dialing in.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bonney. Are there any declarations of interest? No, thank you. Item 6 on the agenda is a public session. We have one public speaker. And I'd like to ask the members to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of December 2025. Minute numbers 545 to 555 as a correct record. One public speaker is Angelina Lyons.
That's my wife, but she said
Okay. If you'd like to come down to the front, there's a microphone here. If you'd like to sit there and read out, you have 3 minutes.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Chair, for allowing us to speak. My name's Stuart and I'm representing the Ospringe Action Group, and I'd just like to read this short statement. Chair, members of the board, thank you for giving me the opportunity to address the committee. My name is Stuart Lyons and I'm speaking on behalf of the Ospringe Action Group, and I'm asking you to consider our petition for a 220-mile-per-hour speed limit in Ospringe Street, Faversham. It has been signed by more than 1,500 people, and these signatures have been gathered in just 4 weeks. 1,500 in a month, about one street, but a street known and used by all who live in Faversham and all who understand the danger. Osbridge Street is one of the oldest roads in England. It is narrow and ancient, a conservation area, and with a primary school at its heart. Every school day, parents and young children put themselves at risk walking to Osbridge Primary on very narrow pavements, alongside fast cars, heavy lorries, and weaving motorbikes. In the last month alone, a vehicle crashed into a building on Osbridge Street, right next to the zebra crossing, and that is just one of many in the past few years. So far, it has been bricks and mortar. The point of this petition is to prevent it being a child. It is proven that a pedestrian struck at 30 miles per hour is 5 times more likely to be killed than a pedestrian struck at 20 miles per hour. The rest of Faversham is already a 20 mile per hour limit. Osbridge Street, narrower, older and busier than many in the town, with many vulnerable pedestrians, is not. What we ask is not unprecedented. In April 2022, the KCC granted a permanent 20 miles per hour limit on the A2 at Newington. The same designation of road, an A road, the IA declared air quality management area, exactly like Osbridge Street. The same health and safety problems for the same reasons. KCC said yes to Newington, and we only asked for parity. A road status can no longer be cited as a reason to refuse. It is 20 miles per hour. If 20 miles per hour was a right for Newington, it is also a right for Osbridge. I know this board is advisory, so I am asking this board to recognise the justifiable fear we have of our dangerous street that is behind these 1,500 signatures, and we request and recommend to the KCC to assess Osbridge Street and agree a 20 mile per hour limit so the standards apply for all. We're not asking for special treatment, only parity. Please, if you would, help us move this forward before a child is hurt or killed. And thank you on behalf of all who live on Osbridge Street and Faversham for allowing me to speak. So thanks very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. How do I go? You've got a petition, shall I send it to you guys here?
Yes, you can.
I'll bring it back.
Thank you. I'd now like to hand over to Councillor Simon Clark, who's going to introduce the next item.
Thank you very much, Chair. Some time ago, I was asked by Councillor Whiting to see if we could get someone along from Network Rail Freight. And I'm pleased to say that we have this evening with us Guy Bates, who's the Head of Freight Development, to give us a presentation and then take some questions, if that's all right with you, Guy. So over to you. Thank you very much.
Hello. Good evening. Thank you very much for having me. There should be some slides appearing somewhere, hopefully. Oh, right. Okay. Do you need that end? Just while that's being set up, just to introduce myself, Guy Bates, Head of Freight Development, Network Rail. I look after our nationwide programme of enhancements to our network to make it fit for freight, generally lengthening loops, altering elegant arched bridges to be square shaped so containers can fit through, that kind of stuff. And I also oversee the development of our freight estate nationwide, sites that we own that are tenanted by end users of rail freight who put their businesses on those sites, pay us rent, invest in them and generate traffic on the railway. So my slides are going to be a bit of a national backdrop, policy backdrop, and then some Swale specific stuff, and hopefully generate some questions from there. So there's only about 4 or 5 slides, which are coming up. So just while those are loading, probably worth mentioning Network Rail own, operate and maintain and renew the network. And when government give us money, we enhance the rail network. We don't run trains. That might well be the case in in about 12 months' time when GBR gets set up, but right at this very moment, we don't operate trains. And in any case, even under Great British Railways, rail freight remains a private activity. So we host the traffic, and we are encouraged to incentivise and enable new traffic, but we don't run the trains. There are 6 to 7 private rail freight hauliers established post-privatisation who do the actual haulage and have the direct relationship with customers who are moving goods on rail. We as Network Rail obviously look after the network, plan on the basis of understood market demand, and have a different type of engagement with end users. Generally, they're tenants on our sites on the freight estate. Are we having any luck? That's it. Brilliant. Okay. Good. We can probably skip the first one because we've covered that. So the first slide, that one there. Oh, do you want me to? Right. Lovely. Okay. So this isn't the lottery numbers for this weekend. This is just a snapshot slide to give you a feel for what rail freight amounts to currently. And we'll go through the images that are shown on there as well. 600, around about 600 freights a day on our network operate. Tiny number compared to the total number of passenger movements on the network, but that's 600 odd freight trains, each conveying anywhere between 40 and 100 HGV loads of traffic, depending on the type of train. 100 HGVs worth of train is supersized bulk aggregate service from the Mendips or from Peak Forest coming down to London, 4,000 tonnes in tow. 40 refers typically to something like the Tesco train, which is 40 HGV equivalent units on a train. 76 refers to the fact that even with a diesel locomotive on the point, per tonne mile, rail freight generates 76% less CO2. So it's by a long shot more carbon effective than road. If you put an electric engine on the front, it's better still. Just a quick cant around the images on the slide there. Top left is aforementioned Tesco train. All the top 5 major retailers use rail to effect their trunk haul around the country. We'll come on to why they don't do it around this neck of the woods, but particularly from the Midlands, Central Belt, down to Wales, down to Essex Thames side, and up to the Central Belt as well, and into the northwest. Sainsbury's, Tesco, Asda, all of them use rail. It's a fast, efficient way of getting volume from a national distribution centre to a regional distribution centre. And in the case of Tesco, they actually pick to store in the Midlands and deliver by rail to Essex Thames side and then direct to store, and then have supplier backload going the other way. Next image, clocking round, is Finnish Automotive. That's a train load of Toyotas, Avensis or Avensi, whatever the plural is, export from Derby through the tunnel into mainland France, and there's a return load as part of the tie-up between Toyota and PSA. Bottom right-hand side, mainstay of rail freight, bulk aggregates. That's a train traversing London. 40% of London's construction materials arrive by rail. You're not going to do that into the capital by road. And it's a similar picture nationwide in all the major cities. The major aggregates players tend to gravitate to city centre sites where you can have value-added activity like ready-mix concrete, things like that. Obviously, the construction sector's in a bit of a dip at the moment. We're not building very much, but when we are, it's a great way of moving several thousand tonnes of stuff right into the centre. Anyone who's conversant with the Shard, the continuous pour, when that happened for the central spine of that building, was all concrete from Battersea, which is one of our high throughput sites. And there were continuous trains in every day of materials to mix the concrete to go and keep the pour going, because you couldn't stop once you'd started, or else you'd end up with cracks in it. Bottom left image is express freight, typified by what Royal Mail used to do. This is parcels on trains, light goods. Looks like a passenger train, but with no seats and windows, like a football special. And you'd push your roll cages on and off and run up to 110 miles an hour. And then the central image to the left of the 600 figure is intermodal, maritime intermodal. That is containers arriving on ships to our deep sea ports, Felixstowe, Southampton, London Gateway, and to a lesser degree Teesport and Liverpool, move by rail from the port to a national distribution centre to be destuffed, etc., etc. So moving on to the next slide. This graph, there's some highlights that we'll point out. There's no need to read all of it in detail. I'm guessing this pack's supplied to everybody anyway afterwards. Gets updated every period. It's basically the commodity chart. The thing of interest there is the relative scale of the different commodities we have on rail. The single biggest commodity is maritime intermodal. That is those boxes arriving by ships into the UK. You wouldn't believe the amount of stuff we buy from China, but there, in that sector, we get somewhere in the order of 25 to 30% of the boxes over the quay go forward by rail. So a reasonable market share. It can be as high as 40 when we're doing well. So that's the biggest commodity on rail today. Second to that, bulk construction. I did say the construction market is pretty flat at the moment, but we are building a high-speed line, and we're also starting to build a new nuclear power station. Those two items alone are bolstering our figures in construction at the moment. Millions of tons of stuff being moved around by rail rather than road. And if you've been to the environment around Swale, it makes sense to put it on a train and not a truck. And then the cluster of lines along the bottom of the graph are biomass, which is wood pellets and stuff going to Drax and Lynmouth power stations, steel, which is a bit variable at the moment, and a few other bits and bobs in there as well. But most of the rail freight on our network today, most of those 600 trains a day, are either container trains from a port or bulk construction material. So block trains, single customer, etc., etc. This slide looks remarkably like the other one, and this isn't the lottery numbers either. This is where we're going. This is where we're headed. 8 is Network Rail have a regulatory requirement to enable 8% freight growth on rail in this control period. We're funded in 5-year control periods. We're just about midway through one currently, and we're currently about 3% of the 8 that we need to get. 75 represents the percentage increase government expect the railway, so that's us and collectively the operators, to achieve by 2050. They want a 75% increase in rail freight by 2050. We don't do that without having a lot of new places to get stuff on rail. There are parts of the country, southeast included, southwest included, parts of the northeast and east links, where rail isn't even an option. You may wish to move your products by freight on rail, but there aren't the terminals, the railheads or anything else. So that's part of the work that my team do, is looking at how we can develop new facilities, new terminals where they're on our land, and aid third parties in achieving that point of connection into our network on privately developed sites as well. It equates to another 450 freight trains a day. So it is a significant increase on what we've got at the moment. So that's the vision by 2050. I think there's a fair chance we'll have an interim target, could be 40 by 40. Maybe that comes out in early July, but government just want to give a trajectory toward that 2050 number rather than it just being in the distance and a vague hope. So what about Swale? So when I was talking to your colleague previously about what are the opportunities in Swale for freight, it does have a rich freight history in this neck of the woods. Not so much going on just now, but there are opportunities. And it's always the case with freight. I've had 32 years in the industry. Things come, go, and then they come back again. So what I've done here on this slide is just give a little bit of an indication as to some of the technical parameters that we have in this neck of the woods for rail freight. Things that are important for freight are the ability to run long trains. The more stuff you get behind the loco and the driver, the lower the unit cost for the end user. So when I started on the railway, trains were 350, 400 metres long. You had 2 guys in the cab, maybe 3. These days you have 1, driver only, and the trains are anywhere from 400 to 750 metres long. So it's a massive increase in productivity. From a rail network operator's perspective, that's very important because every path on the network now carries much more than it did before. It means we're getting much more out of that network as well. So we have quite a busy network in this country. Certainly in the southeast, it's busier than most places in mainland Europe. And yet it's also where all the container trains from the ports want to go through, and most of the building material when we're building stuff wants to arrive. So it's very, very important we make best use of every path. Bigger trains, longer trains, more efficient. You can run decent length trains in this area. I've put on the slide there 600 metres. You may well be able to exceed that. We did in the dying days of Thamesport when it did container trains get over 600. Route availability, which is a meaningless phrase for anyone outside the railway, is all about axle weight. The more weight you can put on a wagon, and operate, the more payload you're getting, better unit cost, etc., etc. Round here, RA10, which is our heaviest, is perfectly doable. If you see a construction train trundling past, it'll be 100-ton gross over 4 axles. That's our measure, and we're good for that. And even the old lift bridge at King's Ferry was rebuilt about 4 years ago with new cords and all the rest of it. That is again capable of that kind of tonnage, as it was historically. Trailing weight, again, how much stuff you can get behind a train. The only real limiting factor for Kent, the southeast, is if you're travelling back across London loaded between Kensington, Olympia and North Pole Depot, so going uphill across West London, you're limited to about 2,500 tonnes. That's a function of what you can actually lift with a single locomotive before it starts slipping. So again, a very generous trailing load limit. And loading gauge, which is all about containers, that is more restrictive in Swale, in the sense that in order to go anywhere else, you've got to go through a tunnel. If you go around the houses to Dover, or if you go straight through Medway, you're through the tunnels there. The gauge is relatively limited, but there are these days wagons with very low decks that allow you to put a container right down low and still get it through those tunnels. The Tesco boxes will fit on the wagon they used to go to South Wales from Sittingbourne, for instance, to the Midlands. So it isn't the inhibiting factor that it once was, because technology has moved on. There we go. So a positive phrase at the bottom. We're good for train load flows or whatever. The last slide of consequence, I just tried to show on a map some of the areas of interest for freight. And these are both historical, but also mindful of inquiries that we've had and discussions we've got in play at the moment over the last few years. Sorry, I can't read and reach the microphone at the same time. I suppose the highlight there is Sheerness. That's what I see to be the most obvious opportunity. Obviously, Peel Ports bought it out after the steelworks closed. It still has a connection to our main line that we maintain. They have lifted the legacy track in the site, but the track bed's there. It's a relatively cheap and simple exercise to put siding tracks back in. The most important thing is it's connected to our main line. That can be eye-wateringly expensive to start from scratch. We had a site in East Midlands near Northampton, big strategic rail freight interchange, hundreds of acres of warehousing and a new terminal. That was the thick end of 40 million to reconnect, albeit that was to the West Coast Main Line, wired, all the rest of it. But it can be an expensive business. The bonus of Sheerness is that bit's already done for us. But freight traffic doesn't run because anyone wants it to, or because the government wants something to happen. It happens because there is a market and there'll be a user who wants to use rail from that site. So Sheerness at the moment is waiting for that, excuse the pun, anchor traffic. What is the traffic base that is going to come to rail from there? Is it finished autos? Is it aggregates over the quay? We don't know yet, but we are aligned with and in dialogue with Peel to try and flush something out there. But that site coming on stream gets this area back on the rail map. It then means there's the prospect of running retailer traffic. You've got a Morrison's DC just stone's throw away that's taking 40, 50 lorries a day from the Midlands. That'd be fantastic traffic to get on rail. Would it warrant a terminal in its own right? Probably not. But if you've got somewhere that you can run traffic through, that's where you can start cooking on gas with a lot of different things coming on at once and get self-established. The other sites I've noted on there, Queenborough. Yeah, there's some car loading sidings there. We used to do traffic through those. We're not at the moment, but there's a lot of finished vehicles arriving through Sheerness. I know VW come through there, but they have a split origin, a split destination shipping system in the UK. So they either go to Grimsby or they come to Sheerness. Once they land in Sheerness, generally, the traffic isn't going very far. But there are other manufacturers of vehicles now who are following a completely different model of distribution. And if we start getting volumes of other stuff coming in, then rail could play its hand, get the stuff up to the Midlands, be distributed from there. Closest that we have to that in the southeast is Ford's bring finished vehicles over the quay at Dagenham and run them up to the central belt of Scotland and also up to the northwest. So it makes sense to move finished vehicles by rail importing, as it does exporting. BMW Mini run train loads from Cowley every day. The only other site of interest there, Sittingbourne. It's a bit of a tight and squeezy site. It's years since it's done any traffic. The last thing that used to happen there is to do with the China clay for the paperworks, long gone. But it's an interesting site. Within the freight team in Network Rail, we also look after what we call charters, which are non franchised passenger operations, steam trains, days out trains, posh trains, that kind of thing. Sittingbourne is a useful staging point for fueling, coaling and watering steam engines. So it could be that site actually ends up being redeveloped to suit that purpose. Heavy freight, probably not so much. But that's the geography that I've picked up so far for freight. I know we've got other sites at Faversham, things like that, but road access is appalling there. You're right next to residents who will moan if anything starts happening, quite rightly. So those were the 4 points I picked off. But if anyone's got any questions or wants to ask anything else or feels I've missed something very obvious, then shout up. I'm just trying to get the last slide up. There we go. That's actually in Suffolk, not Kent. I couldn't find a buffer stop in Kent in my photo library. Thank you very much for listening. Questions?
Councillor James Morrison.
Hello. I've listened with great intent to what you were saying there. But one thing I didn't notice that you were mentioning was Wales, Ireland or Scotland in great detail. There's a lot of freight, especially going through the Channel Tunnel, going directly to these different sections of the UK. What is the plans for it?
Are we talking Channel Tunnel specifically? Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, there is a well-established land bridge operation from Ireland through through Britain across to the continent. Rail has typically struggled to capture anything in that market because of the loading gauge issues we have in Wales and also to the Scottish ports that link across. And latterly, post-Brexit, there's been moves with some manufacturers to actually short sea ship and skip the UK altogether. I think there is an opportunity there. Channel Tunnel is a massively underused opportunity. If I can get boring and technical for a moment, I ran the Channel Tunnel intermodal business 25 years ago. The units that they put on the trains have got about 3 centimetres taller than they were, and they now don't fit on our network. The Channel Tunnel classic route through Kent, from Dollans Moor through to Wembley, is stuck in the 90s, the Spice Girls era. There is a need to gauge clear the route to suit contemporary units, and then you could open that up again. We have been working for some years on reducing the cost of that gauge clearance. We've now got it down to sub £5 million, which is a good value price ticket. But unfortunately, at the moment, there isn't any enhancements funding forthcoming from government for everyday railway stuff for freight. But if we can find a way of funding that, then that would be a great way of kickstarting that traffic. We are, at the moment, for international traffic, we've also taken an interest early in the new year in a site in Barking, which allows us to use HS1's infrastructure to get stuff at least as far as London. That, I hope, will be proving the international Channel Tunnel market in the next 12 months or so, and then build the case for getting funding to do something on the classic route. In terms of Scotland, yeah, most of Scotland's rail freight traffic base is Anglo-Scottish. It's the cars coming up from Dagenham, it's the Tesco train from the Midlands. There's an enormous amount of opportunity on that axis.
The first freight that Tesco's ran was actually from Glasgow to a place called Thurso. Well, it came off a freight depot called George Smith.
Yes.
That was run by...
EWS. I manage the traffic. Don't tell me you're from Thurso.
Yes.
You're not to do with Northfrost?
No, but I'm very, very good friends with Pat and all.
Well, I never. Okay. Yeah, I used to manage that traffic. That's right. Yeah, started off to Inverness and then we put an extension onto Thurso. And I took Tesco's on the then Safeway train, which started their journey into rail freight. We overtook one of their trucks on the A9 at night in the train, and the guy was like, no, just want to be doing this. Fantastic. Lovely to meet you.
Thank you.
Small world.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Saunders.
In your introduction, you mentioned about the national targets for increasing rail freight. I think you said 80%. Could you give us an idea of what, if we were in a static position, what that would mean in terms of reduction of lorry traffic on the road and changes in pollution levels?
Yes. I mean, we could do some detailed maths to work out what the actual carbon saving is. But generally, if you assume every train that we run knocks anywhere between 40 and 100 lorries off the road, if we're talking intermodal, let's say it's 40, then that's the kind of magnitude of displacement of road vehicles that you'll get every day that train runs. And the way I generally describe it is next time you're driving on the motorway, count the next 40 lorries you go past and imagine they weren't there and you didn't have to overtake them because one train was running them instead. And then it just starts to sink in. Oh yeah, actually this will add up to quite a lot. It'd be 76% less carbon on average. It can be more than that. Yeah, if you go, I can find some stats on that kind of stuff to work that out, if that would be helpful. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we did work years ago looking at Asda, with Asda, at moving some of their vehicles 30 odd a day from Bristol down to Truro, and that displaced, I think it was 2 tons of carbon every day. The amounts of stuff are just incredible when you start totting it up.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell Harrison.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Bates, for your presentation. Where possible, I was just wondering where those discussions are currently with Peel Ports and Sheerness, and what sort of situation is. If that is something that could happen, that'd be a very exciting opportunity, of course, for the island, for local people. Just wondering, if possible, you could sort of outline where we're currently at with those negotiations and discussions.
Okay, so we are open to their they're commencing traffic. There is capacity on the line. As I said, their site is technically connected. We've worked quite close to them in the last couple of years in refining their prices they'd received for installing a new terminal track setup, and helped inform some of their thinking about how that could be set out. I mean, the beauty of it is they've got a connected site with lots of space, and those are the two of the things that really help things work. But as I say, it's largely down to their identification of an anchor traffic to make it worth their investing in that final stage and putting the track and the terminal in. Obviously, I don't represent Peel, but the discussions we've had have generally been about, okay, when you're ready to do something, we're already here, we've sorted stuff out, let's do it.
And so from sort of my account of your presentation as well, would it be fair to say that we've had more advanced talks about potential works in Sheerness and Queenborough? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, Queenborough, you could, if you gave it a strim, you could use it tomorrow. That's largely about how attractive it is to an automotive manufacturer or logistics forwarder to bring vehicles off the quay on a public road and then load them onto rail there. I mean, it used to work before. Frankly, though, if the vehicles are originating in Sheerness, it would be more traffic to do through a universal terminal that they have at the site. That would probably make more sense. That's okay.
Thank you. Councillor Mike Whiting.
Thanks, Chair. And Guy, thanks very much for taking up the invite and coming along. It's been very helpful. A couple of questions, really, because a lot of what you've spoken about is a bit like the Peel Port thing. We're kind of waiting for the customer to come forward. I wonder what you're offering those possible existing customers, people like Morrison's, people like Aldi. Morrison's have got the sidings close to them at Ridham, as you know, and Aldi have got sidings they're close to a railway station on the island, or close to the line on the island, going through to Queenborough. Are we talking simply about if new products come on board, you could help out with those, or are you talking about taking existing lorries off of the road onto the rail? I'm trying to understand whether your trains will be full of lorries that wouldn't have been on our roads anyway, because that business was never there.
Yeah.
And the lorries we've already got will stay there. That's what I'm trying
It's a very, very good question. Yeah. You're absolutely spot on. It's both. So thus far, Morrison's and Peel haven't come to an accord that allows Morrison's traffic to flow by rail from Sheerness. Now, I haven't had direct conversations with Morrison's for some years. Interestingly, their lead logistics guy came from Sainsbury's, who was somebody who got Sainsbury's on rail. And I'm needing to follow up with them to see where their thoughts are and see if Sittingbourne could be part of an overall picture. But quite often our experience at a similar kind of site, New Haven, that hadn't seen rail for 30 odd years, we managed to bring into correspondence with each other an aggregates company and the port, and came up with a scheme that allowed them to use it as a new marine dredged material load-out point to rail. But it does now mean the port is back on rail again, and it does mean now we have other inquiries and interest in what we could actually use that railhead for. So it quite often will start with traffic that wasn't there in the first place, but doesn't set foot on road to begin with. But it's that very act of having somewhere on the rail map that attracts people's attention and means there's a lower hurdle of entry for them to come on board. The Riddham dock enterprise is quite interesting. We nearly had a scheme about 15 years ago for there, but it all came apart at the last minute. That is another site that is connected to rail. It's third-party infrastructure that has virtually disappeared into the fields there, but technically it's still a rail-connected site. You could do something there. That would need Morrison's to be really keen on moving rail. If Morrison's had someone in the seat at the top who was like the guy at Safeway at the time, then that would make it all possible. It's quite often it comes down to cost, and it also comes down to motivation and desire.
Okay, thanks very much. That's great.
But it's a very apt question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peter MacDonald.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'm one of the unwashed from the Isle of Sheppey. So, I've also got, well qualified in transport. So, a lot of experience in there. Obviously, short distances wouldn't help with rail freight because, double handling and things like that, it just doesn't work. But having the actual vehicles on a low load trailer, one of your trailers, is possibly a good way forward. Queenborough, I haven't seen anything at Queenborough for a long time. And they used to load cars there, of course, but that was about the last trade they ever did. But I did search on there and found DB, Deutsche Bundesbahn, have got a peppercorn lease on the whole lot.
Correct.
Which is absolutely appalling, frankly. I don't know how on earth anybody signed that up. Not criticising you, it's historical.
No.
It
was how the government got shot of the freight railway at privatisation.
Yeah,
nobody thought it would be a success, and so they bundled the property over with it.
Further, but it seemed to be pretty awful. But obviously, if some of the car traffic or lorries with trailers full of cars, it might be, if you're doing longer distance, if they're delivering fairly locally, then obviously there's no trade in that. But Sheerness has, since they took over the steelworks, have made some great improvements. You don't have to go on the public road. They've built a nice bridge over the thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so that's a good way forward if they've got the trade. And obviously it's distance, and it comes down to how much.
It comes down to money, and distance is important. Although we do, exception that proves the rule, we do have flows that are less than 30 miles from Dagenham through to the central London area for bulk construction. It makes sense because the road journey is almost incomprehensible to try and move that volume of stuff into the centre of town. And we have had short haul intermodal. If you can actually get 2 circuits within a 24-hour period, so your wagons are doing 2 paid journeys a day, again, it starts to erode the unit rate and bring it down to a level that people are paying. But you're right. But I think a lot of roads for rail freight here point to Sheerness in the first instance. It's the most obvious centre of gravity for traffic, and not too far away from some decent volumes, I would say.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, well done.
Thank you. Councillor Alistair Gould.
Thank you. I think you've answered some of my questions already, but really it's about what the barriers are to improving the thing. And is there anything from a council perspective that actually helps remove barriers? Because it's something I think we would all like to see, is fewer lorries on the road. And say everything you've said sounds really great if it can be made to work. And the other slight question is presumably all the rail freight, it has to be sort of is subsidy free, or is there sort of any government subsidy for rail freight?
Okay, so there is a revenue support scheme that broadly applies to intermodal traffic that's been running for some years. Mode revenue support scheme, which gives you about £20 a box if you're bringing it from a port for a sufficient distance inland. But it's a fixed overall grant. It's shared with inland waterways as well. It's administered by the waterways part of DFT. So that's the subsidy. Everything else has to wash its face and pay an access charge to the network, which is determined by the regulator, and which, whilst fuel duty has been stuck since 2011, track access rates have actually gone up, the amount that we charge people for using rail. That said, if you live in Wales, you can get a freight facility grant where the Welsh Government will give you money toward the costs of establishing a rail freight facility. And similarly in Scotland, but we haven't had that scheme in the UK in England, get the geography right, for the best part of 2 decades now. And so that has made it more difficult to set things up. In a grant-assisted world, you could imagine perhaps that might sweeten the deal for Peel and then get them to put something in that then lends itself to attracting all that other traffic. So that if you're Morrison's or North or an aggregates party bringing stuff over the quay at Sheerness or an automotive party, you'd have a facility there in front of you to make use of. It all makes it much more likely. Whereas, as we are currently, you kind of wait to bring those 2 different stars into alignment with someone who actually wants to use rail from day one, and then the site is established. It does make development work a lot harder, but it's subsidy free, so I guess there's an upside for the taxpayer. Well, quite, yeah.
Thank you. And Councillor Paul Webb.
Thank you, Chair. I should think it will be music to the ears of the residents of Sittingbourne and Sheppey to take at least 40 lorries off the road. We only saw the other week, obviously, with the closure of the Sheppey Bridge, I think last week as well, with the backing up of traffic and particularly freight traffic. I should think that if this scheme can be made to work and really can seriously be looked into, it would benefit both, not just the island, but Sittingbourne as a whole as well. You mentioned also this site in Sittingbourne that could be made to use for steam trains, I believe, which would be to the train enthusiast would be an absolute music there is. But no, I just think in terms of anything that we can do to both alleviate traffic, particularly freight, particularly 249 traffic as well, both to and from the island, would be very, very welcome.
Okay. I mean, a question from this side of the microphone, to what extent do you have engagement with Peel, positive or otherwise, currently? And is there anything positive that a local authority body can indicate to a port to try and encourage them down a particular road, or try and make parties that are located in this area more interested in using rail? Obviously, it needs to add up at the end of the day. Oh, sorry, yeah.
Is that okay?
Sorry, Chair, if I may.
Yeah, hello, Monique. Yeah, you can come in.
Sorry. Yeah, I did have my hand up. So, in fact, hello, Guy. It's Monique here, Councillor Bonnie. I think I've got records of emails and discussions that we had back in 2021. So this has been rumbling on in the background for quite a few years.
Yes.
And to be honest, I'm very frustrated. However, I did meet Peel at a recent event, literally about 3 weeks ago, and asked them exactly where they were on this, because I think as you and I left it, that, they were given some options around finances and that, but Peel had separately told us they do have a long list of potential customers, particularly those who are sensitive about getting freight from across Europe on train, and then when it comes to the UK, ends up on a lorry in Sheerness, which, the majority of these customers see that as a risk when it transfers from rail to road, and want it to be on rail. So with that in mind, he told me that they are hoping to have it up and operational in the next 2 years, which is some way as a step forward to where we were previously. I also had a discussion with some of the businesses that are around near Ridham, including Knapp, who said to us about the issues they've had, where they've had like, you know, major contracts, you know, thinking, you know, Olympics, etc. They needed vast amounts of stuff moved, and it would have been really helpful had they had access to freight. And they are particularly interested, as are a number of other businesses in the what I call the Kensby Fields area. So I think we need to move, and I'll drop you an email after this, because there now seems to be, I think, the focus from businesses, for whatever reasons, hitting various environmental targets, that they need to shift this. But also, I think since we last spoke, we've got a waste to power plant over in that direction, which creates a considerable amount of HGV traffic every hour, every day. And it would be really good to see a lot of this stuff moved off the roads, particularly through removing traffic through Junction 5. So, hello, Guy.
And yeah, well, thank you very much for that. I mean, I think I'm all ears for anything. If you ever want to get any of those parties together in the room for a off-record discussion about what their traffic aspirations are, what the opportunities might be, more than happy to do that. Even if it's just myth busting.
I'll ping you an email.
No problem. Welcome that. Thank you.
You've got 3 more speakers or questions. Councillor Simon Clark.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Firstly, I did, at Guy's suggestion, I did make contact with Peel Ports, with Morrison's, and with Brett.
Yep.
From Ridham, but none of them replied to me, which was a shame, because it would have been good to have them here tonight, even in an informal capacity.
Yep.
But with Morrison's, having worked for them some years ago as a driver, there's a lot of times we're running either empty green trays up to Rugby. I don't know whether they still do that, and then picking up from either Burton Latimer, Thrapston or Rushton, where the fruit and veg warehouses are. Is there anything sort of, any railheads sort of around that sort of area, or would it be the case that they might have to move it over to the rail freight terminals at Rugby, just off the M1 there?
Yeah, you're quite right. Morrison's aren't rail connected in their current shed that they're in, that they've been in for quite a while. Bear in mind, these things have a 20-year lifespan, so they're probably at least halfway through the current tenure of their current shed. Rail connected warehousing in that area. You've got East Midlands Gateway just opened. You've got the third evolution of Durft, various other sites in that neck of the woods. So there would probably initially be a road haul to rail, which isn't unusual. And then the trunk haul bit down to here would be done by rail, then final mile around the corner to their site, unless they had a railhead right next door. So there are options there. But I guess if Morrison's were serious about rail, they would then also be looking at, and I don't mean that in a negative way, they'd be looking at where they locate next for their next iteration of DCs, and whether they actually locate on rail connected sites. It staggers me the amount of distribution space that's consented all the way along the M1 that has no prospect of rail connection whatsoever. There's only very few places that have actually got the rail connection at the moment. Which is why it's all the more galling every time a new SRFI proposal gets booted out of planning because of some minor highways issue somewhere. But let's not get drawn into that.
Right, I have 2 more questions. So it's Councillor Mike Whiting, followed by Councillor Maxwell Harris.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks again. It's a quick one, really, because I think what I'm wondering is, now we've had the information here, some useful, helpful information from Councillor Bonney too. I wonder really what recommendations we as a board can make based on what we've learnt tonight, both to the Cabinet members at KCC who look after economic development and transport, and of course to our own committees here, because we have a committee system here. We don't have you know, individual members going around talking to people is a really good thing, and it's good networking. But we need the authority of the committee to be able to do anything formally. But I do think it would be worth reports going to both cabinet from this committee, from here, recommendations going both cabinet members on KCC and to our committee, to our various committees here, so that we can, working with KCC, formally help move this forward. Because Guy's got to hit a 75% increase in traffic in 2050.
Yeah.
So it sounds a long way away, but we all know these things come around very quickly. And getting to where that needs to be is going to take, I think, a lot of the connections that we can make locally that can help Guy achieve that. So it's understanding what they are and then giving the council officers here the authority to go off and do that on our behalf, and certainly through the cabinet members at KCC. So I'm kind of thinking we need some sort of recommendation coming out of this, rather than just leave it as a lovely to meet you. Thanks for the slides, and see you in 5 years. I don't think we can do that.
Okay.
I think I'd like to do something more through you, Chair.
I'm sure we can look at setting up some sort of small working group to put something together to present to KCC. Councillor Harrison.
No, thank you, Chair. Councillor Whiting, sort of, great minds think alike. I was thinking the same thing about, contacting, Councillor Wimble. I thought he's a cabinet member for economic development and special projects, as well as Councillor Jamie Henderson, who is involved in coastal regeneration. And if recommendation is put forward by Councillor Whiting, I'd be happy to second it here tonight as well. I think it'd be really earnest and important, particularly for those. Speaking of my Swale West, Citybourne South colleagues as well tonight, this is a very, very good project for our local area. So if we can support it, I think advocacy on all local tiers of local authority should definitely happen.
So I will call it a day, and we will put something together. Monique, did you want to come back in?
Yes, please. So I think for parties that are listening on this, it's certainly something I've raised in Kent and Medway Economic Partnership meetings numerous times over the years. In fact, I'm sure the board members there are sick to death of me talking about road today. But I think what this does is, listening to the comments in the room, is that I know that what I've said is supported by members on this, which is useful. I've written a note here that I will be picking it up with the officers to pick up on the conversations I had about 3 weeks ago. But yeah, it's I think it does need to be pushed forward. So I'm happy to be part of a working group. One thing I just wanted to clarify, sorry, it cut out really badly when you talked about where the steam train siding or whatever it was. Could you just repeat where that was?
Yeah, it's Sittingbourne. I think on various maps it's called Woods Yard. We've got a maintenance facility there, but there's still residual sidings at the site, and it has once or twice in the past been used for watering and coaling steam locos.
Okay, and so one thing I would like to raise that I've raised in other forums, and it's not particularly your thing, Guy, but it's related to rail, Chair, if I may hang my hat on this, because I think it's a critical importance for KCC, Swale, but also Network Rail, is the replacement of the bridge at Crankey Lane that is really narrow and causes problems, for traffic and the crossroads on Crankey Lane. So if I may, we could put something on the agenda there to bring the right party from Network Rail in to discuss that, because they have costed the scheme. No doubt there'll be a requirement for funding. It is quite a considerable amount of money that's required for that, but that's something that definitely needs to go on the next agenda, so that these things can be incorporated into local plans and into requests for infrastructure when there's development.
Okay, yep. I can take that. If you put something through, I can take that up with our colleagues in the area kind of management team, if you like. Yeah.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you.
Thank you, Monique.
Chair, can I just put some words to formalise that little motion that was half a motion that Councillor Maxwell kindly seconded, if it's helpful, just to really perhaps that we we recommend to the relevant parties at Swale and KCC, which whoever those are, we can sort that out, to set up a joint working group with Network Rail to move this forward at pace. If you want some, I don't know if Philip have got that now. Hopefully.
I'll be happy to help in that. Not a problem.
So if that's a proposal, we have a seconder.
I'm more than happy to second that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Well, I think that's a case of watch this space. And vote. Is everybody okay? Put your hands up if you're in favour of the motion going forward to a working group. That looks like unanimous. Thank you.
Chair, if I may, through you, I'd like to thank Guy very much for agreeing to come down and speak to us tonight. Hope we haven't given you too much of a headache there, Guy.
Not at all. Absolute pleasure.
Also, if you pass along my thanks to Charlotte as well.
Will do.
It's a shame she couldn't come, but I understand needs must. And yeah, thank you very much. It's been most useful.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks for having us.
Well, it was clearly very interesting because the more questions were asked with your answers, the more questions came. So
it's fine. Thank you very much. And met somebody from first.
Could I just comment? Sorry, but could I just comment that I think one of the major areas that could be is all the underutilised part near Ridham Dock, because there's rail tracks there,
yes,
and that isn't used, and there's a lot of factories and other things. So, and as someone was saying about Knorf's, you know, the German plasterboard people, you know, it needs something local. But the other thing I was going to ask you about was if I can sometimes contact you with regard to what equipment you've got for using freight vehicles onto trains, ro-ro type of facility, you know, so that, you know, I don't know because I'm not technically qualified.
No, by all means. The microphone's timed out. You got my contact details, just drop us a line, not a problem.
I can pass those on to Councillor MacDonald if that's okay with you.
Oh, it is, yeah. I think I'm the only person in Network Rail who has their mobile number visible on a public-facing website. So if you Google me, it will come up, don't worry. Thank you.
right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Thank you. Am I okay to go?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Right, the next item has come up as an urgent item, and it's about the A249, the Sheppey Crossing. And I'd like to invite Francis Cluett and Rob Knight to present the item.
I do have a few slides.
Okay.
I haven't got the invite for the Teams meeting.
Yeah.
You sent it, but it hasn't come through.
Thank you.
Does it work on if you plug that in, or does that
Can we
not?
just plug in, or can we just plug in, or not?
Sorry, I can't hear anything. Is anyone speaking?
She's just looking. We're just sorting out a couple of technical issues.
Okay, thanks.
I think we'll just talk if the slide's going. Yeah.
So just do it without the. So we'll do it without. Send that and then.
Yeah.
Shall we start, and then if we can get the slides going, then so much better. Do you want me to start? Yep. Okay. Sorry. Shall we pictures paint 1,000 words, but unfortunately we'll have to go for 1,000 words rather than the pictures. It looks like so. Just to introduce ourselves, so I'm Francis Cluett. I'm head of service delivery with National Highways.
Yeah, so I'm Robert Knight. I'm the general manager for Sheppey Route Limited. So we're the DBFO concession who manage the A249.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just check you can hear us all right. Okay. So just what we wanted to run through today is really a bit of a technical overview of what's been the issue with the Sheppey crossing that we've had to address. To just talk through the response to the incidents that we've had there, and then open up the questions. But I think before we start, I think we're first to say there's a recognition in National Highways and in Sheppey Route that the event, particularly the one on the 22nd of May, did not go as well as it should have done. And we'll very determined to go and learn the lessons from that, and certainly to apologise to you and the residents for the impact that had on you. We do understand that. We do get that. If I hand over to Rob just to talk through the sort of technical aspects of what's gone wrong, and we have got some pictures here, but you'll have to imagine them. We'll share them with you afterwards.
I have just asked to enter the meeting, so if someone lets me in, I can share the photos. Yep, thank you. So let me just share my screen. Sorry. Right. Okay, can everyone see this? Yep, thank you.
Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. So yeah,
Sorry, can I just interrupt for a second? I think we're going to take questions at the end, Ollie.
Thanks,
Jeff.
There you are. So, mic the microphone on. So that's just to to illustrate really the severity of the joint defect and the reasons why the road was closed. So the top two there are the ones that caused the main issues really over the weekend of the 22nd of May, I think it is. So you can see the plate has lifted. It lifted throughout the day. That was the Friday before half term. It was the Friday before the bank holiday. And at the time, it was the hottest day I think we'd had the year. So it was kind of the perfect storm in terms of traffic and congestion. So again, that's just to illustrate the joints themselves. Again, these are just some photos just to show the repairs that have to be undertaken, and also kind of gives you a bit of an insight to the makeup of the joint. So we've got a bit of a slide on what an expansion joint is. So that's what we call them, and they're designed to take the movement of the bridge. So as the bridge contracts and relaxes during the different temperatures and forces it's involved with, the expansion joint will move to allow the bridge to do that, whilst not leaving a large hole for traffic to go over the top of it. So this is what we call a multi-element joint. So it's got lots of parts to it. So you might be familiar to seeing smaller joints over perhaps some of the rail bridges, which are like two metal rails, probably with a bit of rubber in between. They're quite easy to fix when they go wrong. The scale of this joint is, as you can see, is quite a significant thing to do. So that just kind of illustrates what our team had to do is go in, strip it out to the deck, to the concrete, assess the damage to the concrete, which we don't know until we take those plates off, which again thinks cause a bit of frustration because people want to know when the road is going to be open. It's not until we expose what's underneath we can get a full look at the severity. So again, I've repeated some of this, but they take the movement of the bridge. Sheppey Crossing, just as you probably know, it's a complex bridge in terms of the design. It's on a steep gradient. It's on a curvature. It moves up and down, left and right, round and round. So that bridge joint takes a lot of force, a lot of movement, which is what the bridge joint is designed to do. The bridge joint that we have there is a specialist bridge joint, so it requires specialist parts. And again, we'll come on to that under the lessons learned. I've put a note in there just to explain it's a modular joint, which means it's a bit of a Lego set. So if something happens in lane 1, it's not going to affect lane 2. It's kind of in pieces. So just a bit more knowledge. I did just add that last bullet point as Guy was talking. Yeah, as we know, the A249 is a high traffic route with lots of HGVs. And those bridge joints take the brunt of those HGVs. The joints are located just at the start of the inclines, at the end of the inclines. So again, it's taking all the traction force of the vehicles that go over it. To give you a bit of information about the cause of why we think it's failed. So a bit of combination of lots of factors. The heat does not help a bridge joint, particularly the extreme heat we've experienced last week. That moves the joint at its extremities, that is working at its hardest. We've looked at some of the previous temporary repairs we've completed. They were not effective, so that's an improvement we've made. And the age and condition of joint. So we are due to replace that joint. It doesn't mean it's going to fall apart, but it is reaching the end of its life. So we're going to replace 2 joints eventually on Sheppey Crossing. At the minute, we're in the optioneering phase, so that was underway before these events happened. Ideally, we'll replace at least one of them this year. As you can appreciate, it takes quite a lot of design and effort, because as part of that optioneering is to make sure we select the correct bridge joint as well, one that doesn't need too much maintenance, one that's going to last the longest, just for a cost benefit ratio, but also we don't want to be going in there too often. One of our lessons learned from this type of bridge joint, it does require regular maintenance. There's lots of moving parts in it, lots of bolts, things that can corrode, things that can stretch, things that can bend. So moving on to lessons learnt section. So during this period, we've exchanged knowledge with those who've got the same type of bridge joint. So over the country, there's 4 or 5 of these type of joints that have suffered similar issues to us. So it's trying to understand what their lessons learned are, and they've helped us out with spares and repair guidance. So that's worked well. We were able to mobilise our contractor quickly. So I appreciate it caused lots of congestion, particularly that first weekend, but we did have contractors in within the next day or so. They were working on as hard as we could to get it open. We need to look at our resilience, so we need to make sure we've got spare parts. The lead-in times for the parts are quite significant. They come from Italy, and they can't be made in this country, so that's something that we need to work on. And we've got a stock of spares now, which we've procured from other regions. And we need to, in terms of the emergency response, we've recognised we need to expand on the existing multi-agency contingency plans. So there are various plans to deal with Sheppey Closure Crossing. Most of them relate to wind, as again, if you're local, the bridge can suffer from high winds. So when it gets to a certain level, there's interventions to close the bridge. It doesn't really deal with longer term events. The kind of people that will find rat runs through the local areas, and the kind of VMS signage strategy on how we do that. Sheppey is quite a difficult location. It's an important location because there's 2 bridges to an island, but also means there's only 2 routes. We know that the Kingsbury Bridge is an older bridge. Anecdotally, we know they've got problems with their bridge joints as well. So we need to deal with that with our multi-agency plan to make sure we're not putting too much pressure or too much reliance on that structure as well. And I suppose on the approach to the crossing again between Grovehurst and Riddham, or Sheppey Crossing, the diversion route is through Iwade, which is not an ideal route. Certainly not for HGV. It's been traffic calmed, but that is the only diversion route, unfortunately. So it has its own challenges. I mean, Francis might come on to it later, but some of the incident things we found was people would come off and find local routes. They would come off the A2 to go around the back roads, Raspberry Hill, etc. That's not the signed route. That's not where we want them to go. But we need to look at how we stop them doing it. We want them to stay on the 249. I'll hand back over to Francis for incident response.
Yeah, so if I just cover the incident response. So, I mean, the incident response was led by National Highways from our control centre at Godstone. I should say, when we debrief our incidents, we have yet on this incident to do a debrief with all the other agencies as well. So this is kind of, if you like, sort of the key issues that we've picked up that we'll take into that. But that will be the main mechanism to get lessons learned from it. So the first thing we picked up is getting the multi-agency calls set up was not as quick as it should have been, and that meant that some of these issues with the local road network weren't discussed early enough to work out the sort of strategy for dealing with it. There were delays in the communication between the parties in terms of getting in contact with Rob's team and back again. We certainly see from the public feedback that the feeling is that the information to the public was not good enough. So we recognise that, and we'll have to pick up how we deal with that. Rob's already highlighted that some of the signing strategy was not helpful. So we generally speaking, when you sign an incident, you try and get traffic to do as wide as possible to avoid the impact. Clearly, that doesn't work here, and some of the signing strategy that was set was not appropriate and exacerbated the problem. It was, as Rob's already said, this was just about the worst time for this incident, in that resources were already stretched across Kent because of other events going on. And it's the challenge of mobilising resources on a bank holiday is also a bit of a problem. And then, as Rob's already mentioned, the contingency plan for the bridge is for severe weather. It's not really for dealing with an incident like that. So we need to develop a more effective and comprehensive contingency plan for when the bridge is closed. So those are kind of the main things that we've picked up. No doubt when we get onto the multi-agency debrief, we will pick up more lessons from that and understand this a bit more. I can see there's some hands going up, so our next slide is on questions, so that's timely.
Right, the first question we have is from Dolly Worcester.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really disappointed to hear some of those things in that briefing. Sheppey has always been like that. You've known you've had responsibility for the bridge. You know what sort of road it is. You knew what sort of date that was. So for me, listening to that is that there are kind of a lot of things that should have been known about, should have been prepared for, and were not prepared for. And I, for one, don't think it's acceptable to actually say, well, lesson learned. No, we had all of this when the water was down for Sheppey. And then we had all lessons learned. Yep, no. Comms plans are awful. From the start of the incident, we had no comms from National Highways. Local councillors were the ones that brought the attention to Swale, and then Swale had to push upwards for comms to come back. As a result, there was 11 different, slightly different messages that went out to the public to try and support the closure. All of those were slightly different, and quite a number of those had a bit of misinformation attached to them as well, which is unacceptable. There was nowhere that local councillors could signpost. There was nothing on National Highways Facebook page. There was nothing. We were told, oh, it's on Twitter. What was it? 6 months ago was the last thing that appeared on National Highways Twitter. Messaging wasn't consistent. People had to chase for it the entire time of closure. And then when the response was put in, where the cones were changed slightly so that the second bit of the carriageway could be open, people had to sit in traffic for 4 to 5 hours to watch that happen, only for the answer to be, well, we weren't expecting that volume of traffic. Well, you're not, because that happens every single time a bank holiday weekend hits Sheppey. There's always that amount of traffic. They've always got the same amount of people trying to get back from work, and there's always the same amount of children that are coming back from school. So I don't find it quite correct to say, well, lesson learned, we'll go back. These lessons should have been learned long ago. And if you were taking responsibility for that area of the road, you would have already known that those things were in play at that point. So my question is, where was the central signposting? Why didn't the messaging plan work? Why was it not supported on any platform that residents could get hold of or could be signposted from local councillors? And what are you actually going to do to reassure us that actually this comms plan is important, rather than it being secondary to, I think, was it Operation Brock that was happening at the same time that weekend? But you knew Operation Brock was going to happen at the same time that weekend because it was a bank holiday and it was quite warm. So those are my questions. Thanks, Chair.
So, I mean, I think the answer to that comes in the contingency plan for the bridge. That will have to cover the communications and how we make that work, and also pick up the vulnerability around bank holiday weekends. We need to pick the lessons from this. I hear what you say. I mean, nothing I can say to make that change, other than we will pick that up and put it into our contingency plan for the bridge going forward, and make sure that's more comprehensive.
Sorry, Chair, can I just come back on that, if that's okay? I'm seeking quite more reassurance than that you'll just go back and look at this. When are you going back to look at it? When are you going to make it a fairly urgent thing to do? And why isn't there, for example...
Can I just interrupt, Councillor Worcester? I think the gentleman has already said that they realised what happened, they realised the hugeness of it, and they have already got it on the agenda to discuss urgently to make sure it is in the next resilience plan moving forward. So I think to put him on the spot after he's already said what he's going to do is probably a little bit unfair.
But why didn't he come to the meeting with that information, Chair? Because surely he was expecting that we would like to see actual timelines for this.
I would guess because it's very recent, it's ongoing, and had he had the answers, he would have brought them with him, but it's a work in progress.
So when will that come back to the board with those answers?
When they've put the contingency plan together, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Is there a
Yeah.
time?
Yeah. Is there a rough time scale on that?
I think what we've got to do is get the multi-agency debrief, which should happen in the next week or so, and then we will pick it up from there. That will be the.
Once they've had the multi-agency debrief, did you get that?
Absolutely. So it can come back to the next committee meeting, can it?
Would you be able to have some answers for us by our next meetings in October?
October, we'll be able to provide some more. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your indulgence, Chair. Apologies. Thank you.
Next we have Councillor Palmer.
Yep, thank you, Chair. I am quite surprised when you hear that the only contingency plan was for adverse weather. Because if I was in control of a bridge, I'd be thinking, well, there's a big curve on it. If a lorry turns over, we've got a big problem. A severe accident, a fatal accident, a threatened jumper will all cause major problems. And these are common things. I'm not saying common, but not. They are things that have occurred. I do agree what you'd say about the communications. I know KCC wanted to get stuff out and was told we just want it to come from central, from national highways, and then filter it out. I think that perhaps the learning lesson is to say, actually, if we give it to KCC to give out the information, they can cascade it down, because more people will probably see that, whether it's on Facebook, Twitter, whatever. WhatsApp messages get sent out. People then put that on village forums, and it's like the village jungle drums that within a few hours everyone knows. But and I don't think, from what I've heard, is the police weren't the most helpful in the initial stages, that they wouldn't support the traffic side of it. But I am surprised at being told about it. We just considered adverse weather as a problem, as the only problem, unless I misunderstood. Thank you.
Can I answer? Sorry, yeah. Yeah, so there is a general contingency plan to allay your fears for general insurance across the A249 in its completeness. Well, from M2 Junction 5 down to the docks. So that contingency plan covers things like threatening jumpers, accident damage, incident damage, where we're going to talk. My reference to the Sheppey Crossing wind plan was because there's a specific closure plan just for the wind. So the contingency plan does cover the whole network, doesn't particularly go into Sheppey Crossing in detail in terms of if an event happens like before, we need to consider traffic going through our way, traffic going through this way. It doesn't go into that detail. So that's what I was referring to.
No, thank you, and I appreciate that when something happens, but and it's good that hopefully you come back, and I don't think you have to come back and give a verbal update or even just a written update. As soon as it's there, and we'll all get it, we'll all be aware of what's there.
Yeah, and I think on the comms, I'll just add a lessons learnt from National Highways comms team was the people of Swale prefer to use Facebook. I think that was quite a clear and simple thing. And I know Councillor Mike White, I see the name, would post updates on Facebook to tell the community. So, and the representative from Swale, who was as part of the emergency planning meetings that National Highways were organising, was very keen to say, whatever goes out, can we use something on Facebook? So that message has come across quite clear.
Thank you. Next we have Councillor Paul Webb.
Thank you, Chair. I think I can understand some of the operational problems that you say you've had. I would like to point out the fact that there are other places like Florida that have bridges that span 7 and 4 miles over waterways that day to day have extreme temperatures and humidity. They manage to run bridges. They manage to have problems that they solve very quickly. I think this partly comes down to a planning and infrastructure problem that we're just not prepared I mean, you say extreme temperatures. Other countries have far higher temperatures than we do and run bridge networks perfectly reasonably. And also have to source a part from Italy that wasn't ready. You had to order, you had to wait for it. I mean, that wasn't put out and that information wasn't given to people. But also, I just think the people of Sittingbourne and Sheppey just feel it's one thing after another. If it's not the 249, if it's not the bridge, if it's not Grovehurst, it's never ending. None of us, I don't want to apportion individual blame, but equally, the general public just don't want to hear platitudes anymore. They want to hear reasonable solutions that are workable. The fact that, we've got to wait for a part from so-and-so, or we only have a contingency plan for this or for that, just isn't quite frankly good enough. And it's not going to cut the mustard anymore, because the local residents here have just had enough of delays and problems on the 249.
Yeah, and I totally get the local residents, because they've had particularly with Grovehurst going on for months, and our works around that is quite difficult for local residents to have. And I know with Sheppey Crossing recently, there's been a couple of closures, one was a UKPN works, another one was some facilities overrunning. But I get the point. It's everything is a problem, isn't it? And it's the amalgamation of it. In terms of the spares, just to clarify, so the spares that we got were not from Italy. I think my point earlier was to just clarify that these parts do come from Italy. We got these spares within the UK. But to order them it is from Italy. So yeah, if we would order them today, it's months to come.
Right, thank you for that. Next we have Councillor Peter MacDonald.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Yeah, you can probably blame me, because you're responsible now for the road, because originally all the traffic went through Bobbing and I Wade, and the then county council decided they couldn't justify improving it at all. So I went and saw Sir Roger Moat, who was the MP at the time, and I went and saw him, and within 20 minutes he'd seen the minister and decided it was then, the 249 was then going to be a trunk road, which I suggested to him, and then it would be further up the pecking order for funding. And that was certainly true. And so sorry about that, but it's now your responsibility. But the amount of traffic is horrendous. And of course, one of the problems is that in I Wade, they've altered the road pattern, which of course then causes even more delays. So when that's used as a diversion, it doesn't really work. I think the traffic management, quite honestly, and I don't know who was responsible for that, was pretty poor, frankly. It wasn't really going to work. And that's one of the problems. But I can assure you, I've looked underneath the bridge, and there are some. I think whoever built it, whether they've gone bust or something since, or the people who designed it, I suggested they should do, and of course they wouldn't take any notice of me then, that they should do a submerged tube tunnel, which would have been one tube, and that's all, which is what the Dutch do all the time now. They don't like bridges if they can avoid them. But obviously we are where we are, and we can't go back to that. But that would have been a better solution, because there wouldn't be much in the way of expansion or anything else. So, the road would have worked quite functionally and quite well. Some of their roads are actually 7 lanes wide in each direction in round Antwerp. I know that's probably Belgium, but anyway. But I think the traffic management was pretty poor. But as I say, there are some rust spots coming through on the pillars, and that indicates to me, because I've been involved in construction as well, that the cover was insufficient when the steel was done. I think the only thing you can do, quite frankly, is to coat the outside of the pillars so that it doesn't get any worse, because damp penetration will get into the reinforcing bars, and then you've got trouble again. Again, being a bridge, it's complicated. I was going to say I'm surprised that the parts couldn't be made in this country. It depends what they actually are, but they can be flown from Italy anyway. You haven't got to hang about, or even then it doesn't take long. We used to run trucks down to Milano, so it wouldn't take long on a road to bring the parts over anyway. So I think it's extraordinary that you hadn't got any in stock. I'm not blaming you; it's the whole system, and it really can't think. And of course, the other thing is that. In the old days, the gross tonnage on an Arctic was, the maximum was, there were special vehicles, but it was 32 tonnes. It's now 44 tonnes. That's the legal limit now for vehicles. So, okay, they've got probably more axles, so you've got the axle weight on it, but you have got to deal with a heavier weight than what was originally. I don't know, I can't remember when that actually came in, but certainly 32 tonnes gross, which is the vehicle and the load. And of course, it's 44 tonnes now. So, that creates a problem as well. And maybe that caused some of the problems with the joints. And I think whoever designed the bridge, wasn't you. So I'm not blaming you. But it is pretty serious for Sheppey. And when we get these huge delays, I think we've got to think a lot more about how to divert the traffic properly without such hold-ups. Because that's quite unacceptable. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. We now have Councillor Maxwell Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. I take, and I appreciate you both coming down tonight for your presentation to have some sort of clarity and transparency. I take great umbrage against using terminology like lessons learned, particularly as some of the sort of fellow Sheppey councillors have already orated. We had SEN children waiting 7.5 hours in cars without water. People who were not able to get home and to stay on the mainland, whether with family, on alternative provisions, because they simply couldn't get back to the island, and a loss of income, and people losing jobs and losing huge sums of money. So the idea of saying that lessons are to be learnt, I do find almost a little bit insulting. But with your indulgence, Chair, I have got a few questions to ask. The first question is basically on the communication. We've already hearkened that it was the job of local councillors, particularly Mike Whiting, who did a fantastic job in orating these difficulties and these challenges. Why was the communication so inappropriately poor in this circumstance? You hearkened about delays. What specifically caused the communication to be so uniquely poor in this instance?
Well, I think obviously we've got more work to do in terms of looking at that with the other authorities. But I think the nub of this comes down to we were not coordinating early enough with other partners. And I think that was impacting on, in terms of our team's awareness of the impact and the ability to kind of communicate around that. And, as we said before, normally we would put that communication out, we would make it available to Kent and others to put out on their channels, which would be our main route for getting stuff out. And that didn't happen soon enough in this case.
But we're in the midst of a crisis. These works are causing huge difficulties for residents on the Isle of Sheppey. Was there no moment over the course of the last few weeks where you can quite clearly see the communication isn't working, that local councils are having to do the jobs of maybe other agencies? Was there no discussions during that period of time at all where going, maybe chaps, we're not doing this the right way, maybe we need to be changing our track? Because the disgust from local residents was very, very noticeable, not only on Facebook but on Twitter and other mediums. So was there no point during the crisis where you thought maybe it's time to change track here?
Well, I think there was a sort of change in that evening of the 22nd in terms of improvement, and I think we have done things differently in relation to the instances that have happened before, happened subsequently, in that we have been more on the front foot with putting that communication out and sharing it with Kent and other authorities in particular.
So would you say that the communication, you say that a track was changed. I don't think local residents felt a difference or an iota of change at all. So would you say that was you used the word improvement. Do you seriously suggest there was an improvement in communication when, again, it was the job of local councillors to spread that information whilst the agencies, the view of residents was they weren't getting enough? So you think that improvement was enough, do you?
Well, clearly not if you're not happy with it. But yeah, let's take that away and see what we can do when we get together with the other authorities.
And just on the sort of the infrastructure point, again during the presentation was hearkened that this is a specialist bridge. Again, was very much on the point that Councillor Palmer mentioned. Why were there no specialist and provisions made for a specialist bridge during very special conditions when we know that it is getting hotter? It's going to be a busier track. Why wasn't there any appropriate provisions at all put in place when we knew this was a specialist case?
Yeah, so again, hands up, we didn't have the spares, so at the time we couldn't do anything. I know you don't want to hear it, but lessons learned is now we have the spares to deal with that problem. It was an event that we haven't experienced on Sheppey Crossing previously, so there was no kind of learning from before because it hadn't happened. But it was quite as you saw the fact, it was quite a significant joint failure.
Yeah. But you said in your presentation, that the reason for this happening was the heat, previous repairs, aged joints. So they are all sort of, in my view at least, there are three conditions you can prepare for. So again, I asked the question, why weren't those preparations, provisions made in place when quite clearly what you're blaming on the reason for the expansion joint defects, you could see from a million miles away, as per your sort of the examples used earlier.
Yeah, so again, we've been quite open to say this is what we think has happened and this is what we're going to do about it. We can't go back and change it, but now we're going to have the spares and we're going to replace the joints which were due for replacement anyway.
Yeah, again, I'm thankful that you've come here and apologised, but perhaps a public apology probably might go down better with residents. Again, in your presentation, there was a slight contradiction. You said that in reference to HGVs, you're putting additional strain. Is it fair to say then that with additional vehicles going over the Sheppey Crossing, that's causing enhanced issues? So the increased amount of vehicles and increased development on the island that we're seeing with houses being built left, right and centre, is it fair to say that contributed to the defects that we've recently seen?
So we can't say it exactly contributed to that defect, but in just a general broad term, which is why it was in the presentation, and it was added actually when Guy was talking, was HGVs and higher traffic flow will fatigue moving parts quicker.
So again, going back onto the point, we know that overdevelopment now is being built on the island. So what's being done now to circumnavigate that? Because I sit here, like many council colleagues here, terrified of what's going to happen, not only potentially in the next few months, but in the next few weeks as well. So again, what work is being done to ensure that with overdevelopment on the island, which you're saying increased traffic puts pressure on these joints, what is being done to ensure that this doesn't simply happen again?
Yeah, so during this course and the weeks after this event, we've done some inspections, done some additional works to make sure the joint is safe. And again, we are working on a joint replacement, which was due anyway. But I think the other thing is we've inspected the joint, we've undertaken additional repairs across that joint just to give ourselves and yourself confidence that it is good to go.
Yeah. And what happens if it isn't successful? What happens if actually the additional works you do don't remedy the situation, don't fix the bridge? What happens then?
The additional works we do would avoid anything happening to the bridge, and the eventual joint replacement is a joint that's going to last for years and years and years, I believe.
So you're happy to say on record, you're happy to say with surety that we will not, the residents on the Isle of Sheppey will not experience this again. Is that what we're saying? Because of course that's a big, bold statement to make. I'm happy to go back to residents like many island colleagues to say that we've got surety from yourselves that it's not going to happen again. That's a bold statement. Are you happy to actually stay there?
So I think if we just explain again why this failed. So there were temporary repairs in that joint with materials that were not. It wasn't repaired with apart from the manufacturer. It was repaired with a rigid item. All those temporary repairs have been removed and replaced with the components from the manufacturer. So those temporary repairs, which we believe were the cause of these issues combined with the heat, have all been replaced with proper parts. So that's the assurance that we are taking. Can we say 100% nothing is ever going to go wrong with this bridge or these joints? Well, no, we can't. We can't say that. We couldn't say that if we renewed them. but we are as confident as we can be that we have dealt with what we understand to be the cause for these issues.
That's fine. So then going on to the final point, Chair, I mean, talk about the human impact throughout this, and I will call it a crisis because the impact it's had on residents has been immense. What were the considerations for local people throughout this? Because what I see and what many councils see and what many residents see was an uncoordinated, uncommunicated works, which arguably was not best planned at the best of times. During this time, what were the actual considerations for local people? Because from where I sit and from where many of us sit, they weren't actually involved in that discussion. That's how it comes across from residents as well. They weren't thought about. It was just, we're going to do this ad hoc as many times as we need to do without putting their best interests first. So what human aspects were actually considered throughout this time?
I think if we're talking about the incident, it wasn't the key thing. Is it's not planned. It wasn't planned works.
No, I'm not saying the incident. I'm just saying in total operations and the works, it wasn't coordinated, wasn't communicated very well with people.
Can I jump in and make a suggestion that perhaps if you're going to bring back some information for our October meeting, you said about the maintenance. Would it be possible to have like a maintenance schedule that shows when you're going to inspect the state of the bridge to see how it's holding up, and perhaps that maintenance schedule can include a timescale that it won't be done over a bank holiday weekend and it won't be done at the highest tourist part of the season, perhaps in the cooler months when there's less traffic coming and going. So some sort of maintenance scheduled so that we can see that you are planning forward at looking at what may or may not occur in the future.
I think the thing to say is if we could have avoided doing that work over that bank holiday weekend, we would have done it. No, the state of that bridge was such that traffic could not safely pass on it. We had no choice. Our policy is we do not do planned works over a bank holiday weekend, and we wouldn't have done it if we could have possibly avoided it. There was no choice.
No one's disputing force majeure, some acts of God. Sometimes things outside your control and remit. What was in control of your remit was how you went about these works and trying to minimise the impacts and mitigate how much impacted local residents. And from where we sit, I don't think their considerations were put at the best interest of the works and how it went about the operation.
I think we've actually covered this in the answers that were given to Dolly
Fine.
Worcester as well.
In which case, yeah, I'm more than happy to do that. But
So,
residents are deeply concerned, and
and
any reassurances we can get would be great.
We know they're concerned, and they're concerned about what's going to happen in the future. But we have still got quite a lot to get through as well, and I think we've had most of the answers now. Next, we have Monique Bonney.
Hi there. Yeah. So I've got a few questions. When were these temporary repairs that have come? It's clear that they were faulty. When were these done? These repairs?
So these repairs were April, I believe.
Okay. And you said there's some other bridges that have similar expansion joints in the country. Are they also bridges that are under the control of Highways England?
Yes, there's a couple in Highways England in the northwest and the southwest, and the Tamar Bridge, which I think is an independent.
And so I suppose the question is, if Highways England have a number of assets that have similar sorts of joints, why have they not got an overarching view that why have you got stock in one location that wouldn't be normally available for the use of any bridge with a similar joint?
That's the change we've made. So the repairs that have happened subsequently have been from National Highways stock elsewhere. What we didn't have was a register of what spares we had where. So it was not, we weren't identifying over a bank holiday weekend, where that stock was quickly enough. But as Rob has said, our plan is to get spares in Sheppey, specifically for Sheppey, when we're able to.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose this is, it's a big operation and a whole road network, and I'm sure you locate product in local areas, but it's not beyond the wit of man to, courier things up and down the country, which I'm sure you've had to do urgently. But it is surprising that basically our highways authority is ill prepared here. And what they are also ill prepared for is routine maintenance. Expansion joints, it is a known thing that expansion joints go. They need to be replaced every, however, 15, 20 years, whatever it is. I'm sure the engineers who originally designed this would have put together a handbook and written about that and, specified these particular products. So I don't find this surprising that it needed doing. The urgency and how it came about is surprising. And I think there's a couple of things that really concern me. Is that it forced an awful lot of traffic onto the old crossing. Now, can you give us an update on the health and status of the old crossing? Because the old crossing we rely on for rail as well as vehicular traffic. And as you will have heard earlier, we were talking about the possibility of freight rail. And what would be absolutely cataclysmic is that in future something happens, which is likely to, accidents happen. And don't forget, this bridge did have, what was it, a 40-car pile-up, and the drivers were all blamed for driving badly in that. There's a bit of a suspicious pattern occurring where it's everybody else's fault here. But I think we want to be assured that the old crossing has considerable life left in it, and where there's weaknesses in it, i.e. its structure, how that is planned to be remediated because of the rail infrastructure and the water and the other infrastructure that goes over to the island that's attached to it. So can we have some assurance on that? I think this committee should be writing to the DFT to set out its anger and concerns that the Department for Transport has really underestimated the road infrastructure on and off the island, considering it has 3 prisons and a port, as well as a resident population and a tourism population, as well as businesses, and that it has become wholly unreliable. Whether it be the A249 or the bridge, what has been shown over the last couple of years is a complete pattern of failure, and the ramification on businesses on the mainland as well as on the island. And I run a small accommodation business, but actually that particular week I was accommodating some businessmen who were working for the prisons and couldn't easily get on or off the island due to those works. So it has a profound impact on businesses, but also visiting businesses as well, business to business services. That this committee write that letter to the Department of Transport, or makes a recommendation that the leader of the council write to the Department of Transport and ask that these things are responded to and acted upon.
Are you putting that forward as a proposal, Monique?
If I'm allowed to vote, yes, but if not, I will rely on a committee member to put that forward on my behalf.
Okay. Somebody.
I would put that forward, but I think it should be perhaps from the chair of the Joint Transport Board rather than waiting to go to the leader, so we can get it off as soon as it's drafted and checked, even if it's just, signed by yourself and your deputy. And then that covers KCC and the Swale side, and off to the department.
Okay, so you propose that. Got a seconder?
I'm happy to second, Chair.
Okay, then we'll do that.
I just for clarity, really. So the Kingsbury Bridge that they referred to is a Network Rail bridge on Kent Council Highway. Just we've got three different authorities. Yeah. For clarity.
The CCC.
Thank you. And I think that shows the importance of writing to DFT.
I've got next for speaking is Simon Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Should we vote on that proposal before I come in?
A vote for the chair to write to. Okay. Unanimous.
Could I suggest, Chair, you write to the DFT and then copy in the leaders of Swale and KCC?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so that's passed. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Many questions come to mind. The first question is, what is the maintenance schedule for inspecting those joints? Because there must be a maintenance schedule to inspect those joints. Obviously, there is what I suppose would be termed as a service part in the grand scheme of things. So, what is the maintenance schedule? And coming on from that, why was the expansion joint repaired with, shall we say, suboptimal parts? Also, when you knew that these expansion joints were coming to the end of their life and you got it in mind that they needed to be replaced anyway, so surely that should have been picked up in a maintenance schedule. I have more, Chair.
Yeah. So maintenance schedule. So all bridges get what we call a general inspection and a principal inspection. So every 2 years, it's either a general or a principal. So the interval is 6 years principal inspection, and then 2 years GI, 2 years GI, then another principal inspection. So that's the principal inspection is a detailed inspection where you can touch all aspects, which includes the bridge joint. In addition to that, there's an annual maintenance where we go in and look at the rest of the structure as well as the bridge joint. But I do take your point. One of the lessons learned and the learning that we're getting from our counterparts on other areas who have got the same joint, we're trying to ascertain what they are doing to keep their joint, and there is some improvements that we're going to make in maintaining the joint. In terms of the temporary repairs, again, we've recognised that those temporary repairs weren't the correct type of repair. They had worked historically and lasted a number of years, but these hadn't. They weren't as a stopgap till we're going to replace it straight away. They were expected to last, but unfortunately they didn't. So again, we've learnt that they were the incorrect repairs, and they won't be done again.
I find that a little bit incredulous, actually, that it's only a light inspection, for want of putting it in layman's terms, is every 2 years, and a full inspection is every 6 years. I mean, you admit from your own presentation that the amount of freight traffic that uses the Sheppey crossing, i.e. haulage companies, etc., etc., is significant. And also, if you chime in with the weather, I would have thought it would have needed inspecting at least 6 monthly or annually, judging by what you said about the amount of traffic going across there. And you said that the joints were due to be replaced anyway. When was that scheduled to be done?
So just back on inspections, just to clarify, so they also get an annual maintenance, which is 12 months, which is annually. And also we have inspectors out there every day during the week who drive the joints and specifically look at those joints for any sign of defects. In terms of the joint replacement, so that's been in design for the past year or so. So we're just trying to find a suitable joint. Yeah, so we hope to replace it, or at least one this year.
So picking up on that, then you're looking to replace the current joints with, if I'm correct in interpreting what you're saying, with a different type of joint rather than the same one that's there now, or is it going to be the same type of joint again?
So it's yet to be determined. So we're optioneering with all the joint options, including the one that's there, just to see what solution is the best.
Yeah, I'm still not 100% happy with the fact that these maintenance inspections, if you say that your team are driving over the bridge regularly, I mean those expansion joints, when you hit them anyway, even in a car, for some significant time now, you've been able to tell that you've driven over them because of the bump and the noise. So surely your inspectors should have picked up on this, and they should have flagged it to you to speed up your replacement of the joints, because the joints were inevitably going to fail at some point. This wouldn't, maybe they're not the same sort of joints, but I take the point from the Millau Bridge in France. The French would go up the wall if the Millau Bridge or another bridge like that was shut on a bank holiday weekend, or it took, it would be, why wasn't it maintained properly? Why wasn't it picked up? Why wasn't the joints? There's so many unanswered questions around the maintenance and the sorry state that these joints have been allowed to get in. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you. Now, next.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much I can add to what I've already said, but there is a maintenance regime, and perhaps in October, I think one of the actions was to come back with some information. Yeah.
Okay, we've got Councillor Mike Whiting next.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to start with some thanks. Thanks for coming, guys. It was never going to be easy for you tonight, and you're not getting an easy ride. And I think that's as it should be, really, because this was, as has been said, a crisis the other weekend, and I think it needn't have happened in the way it did. I would like to say there's a young lady at FM Conway who has been brilliant. So she knows who she is. Could you pass the thanks? I'm not going to mention her out in public, but I'll mention her, but not her name. If you could pass that back for me, Richard, that'd be good. So I've got the niceties out of the way, really. I think that there were two issues here, Chair, as I see it. We've got the issue of the fact that the joint broke and it caused a problem. That should have been foreseen. I think I agree with Councillor Clark. The inspections are clearly not up to scratch. The part would have had a working life. They would have known, is it a 5-year, 10-year, 20-year, 40-year? How long do these parts last? There's other examples around the country. And it should have been planned in that the thing would have been replaced before that working life was over. And that clearly hasn't happened. Someone somewhere in a meeting at National Highways has sat down and says, let's just wait for it to fail and we'll pay for it then, rather than get one in advance. I don't know. If that's not right, then, Francis, tell me it's not right. And somebody didn't make a decision not to do anything in time for it to be replaced before its shelf life was over, its usable working life was up. So I think that's the first point I'd make. So the second point, which is a bit where we have to bring in the effect on the community. I'm not going to repeat all the points or answer the questions, other than if I was sitting at your wash-up meeting and I sat at planning meetings for Brexit on the M20 and the whole of the Kent network. And the things we looked at were the things that seem to have gone astray here, was traffic management off the strategic road network. There wasn't any. And there were no plans for any. When Brexit happened 10 years ago, well, it was 10 years ago, we spent months planning those things to ensure that those villages and the towns and everywhere else off the strategic road network was, and national highways were forced. I remember ministers coming down, they were forced to open their eyes to the fact there are other roads, not just theirs. And they are impacted when national highways roads are closed. And you have to do something to plan for that. So if I was chairing your wash-up meeting, I wouldn't let you out the room, any of you, until we've got all of that sorted. So that when October comes, there's something to report back. I certainly wouldn't let you out of the room until you got the welfare issue sorted. Having young people, and we know it's the school time, we know the kids, and 800 kids a day in the school buses in the summer, or come up to a bank holiday weekend with all the holiday these things are known. So to say this has never happened before, no, your joint hasn't broken in this way before, but the bridge has been shut before. And there is a book, someone's got to dust it off, but there's a book somewhere from the last wash-up meeting that says when this happens again and the bridge is closed, for whatever reason, bridge is closed. So what do we do about it? And there will be a manual somewhere that you all discussed last time, and you all pat yourselves on the back for creating, and now it seems to have been completely lost. Traffic comms has been mentioned. I'm not going to go over the questions again, but I wouldn't let you leave the room until you got your comms sorted out. I was lucky. I had the young lady at FM Conway literally phoning me up and telling me, and she was good enough to phone me up the other day and say, oh, we've got another problem now. And that's, you get that out there. But we can all put it out there if we're all told in a way, but there's no comms. I wouldn't let you leave the room until the comms had been sorted. So maintenance schedule, traffic management, welfare and comms. If those 4 things aren't in the report that we get in October, and I'd hope that we get a report before that, then you haven't all done your job sitting around that room. And when we weren't sure in the Brexit thing what to do, we got the army in. They come in the room. And we asked them what they would do because they're used to doing stuff. So get the right people in the table when you have that room, and then don't all walk away patting yourselves on. I'm sorry, Chair, but don't all walk away patting yourselves on the back that we've got this sorted, because I don't think the residents don't believe you have. So it doesn't matter what we say around this room, and we've heard your answer. So there's no point. There's little point in repeating the questions. But that's the one thing the challenge I'd set you is don't leave that room. And tell your chairman, whoever chairs that meeting, not to leave the room, the gold commander, whoever that's going to be looking after it, to not leave that room until those 4 questions are properly answered. Thank you, Chair. Sorry for the rant.
I'll let you off this time. Next, we have Councillor Morrison.
Thank you, Chair. One of the things that I worry about on the Isle of Sheppey is every time something happens, it's always the islanders that suffer. Nobody else. The highway roundabouts, the bridge, where they're going down to build the battery farm, all these roads are going to be washed out, whichever way you want to put it. My worry is, what are you going to do about it when every time you try to get a hold of highways or anybody, it's hours sitting on the phone waiting for an answer? You can't get a hold of anybody to put it out. The other thing I would like is, if something happens, and we can't say it won't, Councillor Whiting did a very, very good job in letting people know, but why did you not let people know in the parish councils on the islands and Sittingbourne? Why? Thank you, Chair.
Chair, could I come back with one question? I forgot. There was a question at the end of mine. Would you mind offering? It's a very quick one, but it's a very important one. We know that sorry, a very important question. We know that SGN are going to close your bypass route. So your alternative route through Iwade will be closed for the whole of August. Okay? So if the road is in any way affected between Grovehurst and Riddham in the whole of August, there is no way on to the Isle of Sheppey. Coming off, you'll be fine, but there'll be no way on to the Isle of Sheppey. I'm told that this has all been discussed at the highest level, but I am not reassured by the answers I've heard tonight that we won't have a further problem on the A249, either be on the bridge or on the main carriageway, and that we won't have a serious problem knowing that we won't be able to easily open up Iwade because of the gas issue and the difficulties about working around a live gas main. So I couldn't leave. Sorry, Chair. I meant to get that in as part of my little rant earlier, but it is a question. What reassurances have we? Going back to Councillor Maxwell's point. Sorry, Rob, it's putting you on the spot. What reassurances have we got that we won't be forced with having no way onto the island because of the closures during our busiest period during August? Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll have to take that because I'm not as close to it as the team that are managing it. So I'll have to take that away and come back to you and just give you that reassurance of what the plan is and speak to Kent because obviously they're involved in it as well.
It might actually be worth having a look at all the utilities because I know we've got an awful lot of waterworks planned as well around the whole of on Sheppey and throughout Swale. So.
Well, a part of your wash-up meeting, perhaps I suggest the fifth item is that you discuss what you do when Iwade isn't available.
Right, thank you. Next we have Dolly Worcester.
Sorry, Chair, just quickly. So just for clarity, the October meeting, some form of report is coming back and there will be an officer from National Highways with it. It isn't acceptable just to have an email update. We need that scrutiny in the room. We rely on the members of this board to do that for us. Happy to attend as a visiting member, absolutely. But we need to be able to have some right of reply to those comms plans and the assessments of what happened and you know the other thing that I would respectfully request is that we don't use phrases like just stick something on Facebook because that absolutely belittles the way that the majority of people consume their information. Most people have a smartphone in their back pocket and it's absolutely National Highways issue that you didn't update your Facebook site, you didn't update your website, and you didn't update any other platforms. You didn't include schools. You didn't include thinking about the extension of response time for Kent Police, who do not have response based on the island, leaving areas like Laysdown, Eastchurch, Walden Bay completely open to having just their beat officers support. It's not really on. So when you're talking about a comms plan, it isn't just a matter of sticking something on Facebook. It's actually about how are you preparing to communicate with your basic infrastructure and how are you really reassuring us who are elected by residents to make sure that there is a choice. Lots of people sitting for 5 or 6 hours didn't need to be there. If they knew, they could have easily have just decided not to travel. They could have easily have said, well, do you know what, maybe Sheppey isn't the place for a holiday that weekend, and have the choice. And we need that leadership, we need that scrutiny, and we need that accountability. And I, for one, absolutely believe that this is the right place to get that for residents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dolly. I think that we have quite a good network from what you've said, and also just like contacting people that are at KCC, because KCC has access to all the education people, it has access to the emergency services, and I think it just starts at the top and is like a spider web and works its way down and out to the residents through various ways like social media and emails and what have you.
So, Chair, just to say, I completely agree with that. And actually, when we looked at KCC, the problem was that it was the first day and the cascading effect of not declaring an emergency, not declaring there was a problem on the first day. That is where the bulk of the problems occurred. But it has highlighted something that is a reoccurring problem, which is a comms plan. The single point of failure is what this comms plan is regarding the bridge. And it's so easily fixed with no budget. just rewrite your policy, make sure there is one message that goes out to all the appropriate places, and make sure that we can rely on that. Even the MP's office had trouble finding a decent message to put out, you know, and that can't be the right way forward for any piece of national infrastructure. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dolly. And the last person for a question is Councillor Palmer.
Yep, thank you. I think there's a few good points to take away, actually. And I think Councillor MacDonald and Councillor Harrison raised a good point about weight of vehicles. There's a lot of heavily good vehicles going over there. Modern vehicles, particularly electric vehicles, are 20 to 30% heavier than their equivalent petrol or diesel engine. And is that causing an extra wear on the bridge, which may have sped up or speeded up the decay of the joint? And I also think, was it a specification of the works issue? Because I think you said it was a substandard joint, or is it a quality assurance process of checking that? And I think another guiding principle you should have taken away from here is when there's a feature on that bridge that goes wrong, it has such a massive impact around Sheppey and Sittingbourne. And I don't think the people at Godstone realise that, which is why it was slow to come out. And maybe that should be a red flag incident on the bridge. You're going to have a lot of delays. But I echo what Councillor Whiting said. I think you've been very honest and open and upfront, and let's hope we learn from it and the things aren't repeated. And thank you.
Councillor Harrison.
It's just upon a clarification, because Councillor Whiting has made a good point about the potentiality in August of the I-Way being unavailable. I understand, Mr. Knight, you said you committed to giving an answer. We are going to need an answer well before our next October meeting. I'm not saying that we're going to have apt time to scrutinise it, but to make sure that residents on Sheppey have got a clear-cut answer to the solution about that potentiality. I'm just wondering when, Mr. Knight, we can, timestamp a suitable reply to Councillor Whiting's very apt question about how we mitigate that potential crisis again.
Yep, so I'm not sure what Councillor Whiting Communications had already. So they lack some assurances elsewhere, have you, regarding that issue?
Through you, Chair. I've been told it was checked with KCC and checked with National Highways. But I wasn't given any assurance that if something did go wrong with the A249, there was a plan B.
Okay, cool. That was just for my information, really. Yeah, so within a couple of weeks. Yeah.
So did you want to reply, Councillor? Yeah, Peter.
Yes, if you don't mind. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, the problem is, obviously, which you fully realise, is there's no real alternative. And the design capacity of a two-lane road is 13,000 vehicles a day, which is the bobbing and highway bit, which has been a bit spoiled. And of course, a dual carriageway takes a lot more traffic, which is, I think, 30 or 35,000 vehicles a day it can do. So you're going to have serious problems. So things need to be done very urgently, regardless. I mean, you say about these joints in other bridges. I don't suppose there are many where there is no alternative whatsoever. And that's the problem. So that's why there were such huge backlogs and problems. So it really needs somebody up the tree to take responsibility. With regard to the SGN, I have an issue with utilities. I've worked on roads and also putting drains in and things like this many years ago, but we had to work 24/7. And I'm absolutely appalled when I see some of these jobs, contractors, preferred bidders, who are then clear off, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They should be working 24/7. We were allowed to work up until 10 o'clock in the evening and then 6 o'clock in the morning. But between 10 and 6 in the morning, you had to do the quiet work. You weren't let off the hook. So that's part of the problem, is a national problem where some of these utilities are getting away with it, quite frankly. and that isn't good enough. I can't believe it's going to take them a month to do some work in Wade, because that could cause us very, very serious problems. You'd have to use the villages and the lower road, and maybe the other way, which would have been from through Knorfs or Nafs, whatever you like to call them, the plasterboard people, and then coming in the other way to get into the Sheppey crossing, the old bridge. You know, obviously I remember the old bridge, which was one way working, but that's been pulled down many years ago when this current lifting bridge was built. So, you know, it is very serious because there is no alternative at all. That's the problem. So it really, somebody further up the tree needs to realise that anything that happens is very, very serious and it needs to be dealt with. I know you did one-way working for a while on the Sheppey crossing, but the boards coming onto the island, I wasn't driving an Arctic, but even driving my car, you could hardly read it, frankly. It wasn't done very well by the traffic management team, frankly. It needs, if you want to keep 44-ton Arctics off the bridge because of the state of the joints, then that needs to be much clearer than what it is, because I did see one or two vehicles go over, and it wouldn't be the driver's fault, quite frankly. It's because the signage was very, very poor. Anyway, sorry, I'm not having a go at you. I know you've got a lot of responsibility. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we've highlighted quite clearly that as of today, we will have 32 days before that road closes for SGN. So it does sort of make it quite urgent to get some sort of alternative route in place with the correct signage. Right, okay, I think that is done now. Thank you very much for coming down and for taking the flak in good grace. And we look forward to hearing from you with regards to future plans and moving forward.
Thank you for your time.
Just to clarify, assurance on the SGN, I should come back direct to Councillor Mott.
Right, thank you for all coming back in a timely fashion. Item 8 on the agenda is a petition for the residents' parking scheme for College Road in Sittingbourne. So if Mike Knowles is online, he's going to present the report to us.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, a pretty self-explanatory report. Just to present a petition which we've received from a number of residents in College Road. The section of College Road in question is between the junctions of Barrow Grove and Bassett Road, and the request from residents is that they've referred to it as a residents parking zone. I believe they are asking for the existing residents parking scheme to be extended to include this section of College Road. There are a total of 31 properties located in this section, and there were a total of 13 signatures on the petition, 9 supporting the implementation of a scheme and 4 objecting. I'd just like to highlight the concerns around potential implications should a scheme be extended into this section of College Road on the adjoining Medway Close and Manor Grove. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. We've got Shelley Cheeseman is going to be speaking on this item as a visiting councillor.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak. I would ask members to vote for the officers to undertake an informal consultation with residents of College Road on the possible extension to the current residents' parking scheme. The residents are finding it increasingly difficult and frustrating to park in the road they live. They are having to park in neighbouring roads, then walk home. This is residents of all ages, some with young children and the elderly. This is not safe for them walking back in the night. Cars come and park in College Road in the morning and they're there all day. Some stay for several days, even a week or more. Cars are also parking on the dipped curbs for crossing the road either side of the junction with Medway Close, causing people to walk further into the road to pass, which is not safe. So could I ask that double yellow lines be put here? So I would ask you to vote for this consultation to support the residents of College Road. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cheeseman. Any questions? Simon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I have to echo everything that Councillor Cheeseman has said. This part of College Road, which I refer to as College Road North, has been a problem for a number of years, and I read the report and I acknowledge what Mr Knowles says about Manor Grove and Medway Close, but Medway Close is all driveway parking. All the houses there have got driveways, garages, etc. So the only place that any displaced people such as come along during the day who commute to wherever would be a small section on the turn into Medway Close, and to be quite honest, I don't think there would be as big a problem, I think, as Mr Knowles might think there is with people displacing into Manor Grove. I'm not saying that there won't be some people that displace into Manor Grove, but I just don't think it would be that big a problem. And I know with the petition it says that there is only 13 signatures, but the resident who went round with the petition, she actually went round 3 or 4 times trying to get people in most of the houses. So it wasn't for the lack of trying to get residents to sign. And some residents in that part of, well, 2 or 3 maybe more, have got actual parking at the front of their house. So where it says the installation of double yellow lines to make passing spaces, sorry, not parking space, passing spaces, that could be done, I think, with the use of, I think, what's termed as dog bones, the white single line with the cross hatches on the end. Doesn't necessarily mean, have to be with double yellow lines outside people's houses. So I would just urge the committee, as Councillor Cheetham did, please vote in favour of moving this forward to an informal consultation, and hopefully the consultation will prove more fruitful in getting responses. Thank you, members.
Councillor Paul Webb.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to point out that obviously the petition that we received is only 9 residents in favour out of 31, and I would like to support the recommendation for an informal consultation, because I think we need to go back to the residents and of all the 31 houses and see what their opinion is on this.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. No, I've got no issues about supporting this particular item. The only question, if possible, through yourself, Chair, to Mr. Knowles is, we've seen sort of 13 responses out of 31. I'm happy to support this item. I'm just wondering whether this is a 42% sort of return rate, whether that's similar to these sort of petitions. I'm happy to support it. I just don't want there to be a democratic deficit. So whether Mr. Knowles might be able to answer whether this is a sort of an average sort of quantitative number of results as usual from residents. That's just the only question I've got.
Yes, I'm certainly happy to come back with that, Chair. Generally, there are a higher percentage of signatures on a petition, but I take on board what Councillor Clark said in relation to 3 or 4 attempts to get signatures. I think the main concern was around that, as you say, there were only 13, and of those 13, 4 were objecting. But obviously, more than happy to go down the informal consultation route. My main concern, as I said, having had telephone calls previously from residents of Manor Grove regarding existing parking problems, was that we didn't want to exacerbate any parking issues there. And if further down the line we were forced to look at residents parking in Manor Grove, it would substantially reduce parking capacity, because, as I've stated in the report, part of the parking in Manor Grove is through parking partially on the footway, which I believe used to be grass verges, and I can only assume that the Highway Authority surfaced those some years ago to try and alleviate some of the parking problems there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor Richard Palmer.
I was going to say, I think Councillor Webb proposed a recommendation. I'm quite happy to second it and quite happy to support the ward councillors on this. Thank you.
Okay, so we shall move to the vote to go to an informal public consultation. And that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to item 9, update on the local electric vehicle infrastructure project and other electrical vehicles EV charging infrastructure. If I could ask the officer to introduce the report, please. Councillor Palmer.
So I was going to speak after the officer if they're there. If not, I was going to say, as it's an update, we've all read the update and I'm quite happy to note it. Thank you.
Councillor MacDonald.
Yeah, I don't know whether this is in part of the thing, but I don't see really why taxpayers should have to pay for these various charging points to be made, that if it does go forward as charging points, I think the electrical suppliers, Swale's not going to make any money out of them. So I think the electrical suppliers should actually provide them if that's the way things will go forward. Thank you.
Okay. As it's an item for noting, are others happy to note the contents? Noted. Oh, sorry.
I would like to hear the. There now.
Is that Mike Knowles again?
Chair, I think this report was on
Sorry?
This report was on the agenda for JTBs. I don't necessarily know, unless you want to ask Daniel.
Can I ask Daniel if you know any information about this report?
The electric charging chair.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, it's a report that was done by KCC and sent to all authorities. So it was sent to all districts to review, and I believe it's gone to kind of every meeting that we've had recently.
Sorry, Chair. If there's no report to be had, then from the officer, then yeah, okay. Well, let's move to note it.
Councillor Saunders.
Yeah, having read the report, it kind of seems to indicate that there will be locations in Swale. It would be quite nice if the board could know where those locations are going to be, if there's any information on that. Is that something that the appropriate officer could inform you about, Chair?
Did you hear that, Daniel?
Yeah, I heard that, Chair. I can get in contact with them. It's obviously they've supplied the information for today's meeting. The same as Grovehurst. We've got that information here, haven't we? But unfortunately, I'm the only one from Highways. So I will take back anything that I need to take back to my relevant colleagues.
Okay, so are you okay with that, Councillor Saunders, that Daniel will take it back and see if he can find out the exact locations? Okay, thank you for that, Daniel. So are all members happy to note it? Okay, that's all agreed then, so thank you. So the report is noted. Item 10, the date of the next meeting will be on Monday, the 5th of October, 2026. And I'll now close the meeting. Thank you.